Welcome, folks, and assorted prog noggins to episode 4 of the Prog Council. I, of course, am Dave Ayers. I am the host of Bleeding Edge interviews, all the silly little things that I do. With me this evening, we have the core of the Prog Council. We have Jordan Blum. You will know him from his work with Loudwire and Prog Magazine for a couple of examples. Jordan, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to do this again. This has become like a highlight of my month, highlight of the end of the month. Enjoying the warmer weather, finishing up my semester tomorrow. So looking forward to my summer vacation and of course, digging into all the new prog that's coming out and that has recently come out and just loving life.
Excellent. Vacation, all you ever wanted. All right. Also with us tonight, we have Paul Zotter, the one and only. He is one portion of the Progressive Palaver podcast. Paul, welcome, my friend. Also, a rather notable musician himself who's got a couple new singles out. There's an opportunity to plug those for you,
Sure.
Paul.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here. PaulZotterRocks.com. You can become one of my 28 monthly listeners on Spotify or any other streaming service that you choose, or head over to Bandcamp. But just happy to be here as a member of the Prog Council. And go Flyers.
Go Flyers. Here we go, Flyers. Here we go. Paul is representing for Philly.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. Anyway. All right, guys. Well, so tonight we had talked about it. This is our first episode with no actual guest. So that means we get to just run around and play as much as we want without anybody else here. But looking at a timely topic. With the news of Mariusz Duda leaving Riverside, that big announcement this week, which really seems to have very much rocked the prog world. I'm seeing reactions to that all over the place. His name didn't come up specifically, but in my recent interview, I think the topic was broached briefly, just in a general way. I won't say any more, but it certainly seems to have shocked a lot of folks, and there's a lot of us dismayed at the idea of there being no more Riverside, which has been one of the mainstays of the prog world. But it kind of brings up that whole idea of when a main member, if not the main member of a band, of a big band, leaves the band and goes off to do other things, temporarily or otherwise. But in most cases, I can think of some really big ones where it was permanent. And I'm sort of curious, what were your reactions to the Riverside news, guys?
Somebody months ago told me that it might be happening. I'm not going to say, but I had an inclination that it was coming eventually. But it's still a shock because I mean, anybody who loves modern progressive rock and progressive metal, because Riverside are definitely a band that can, they're both kind of at once. Like they're one of the best, like in terms of songwriting, in terms of like instrumentation, but prioritizing like great songwriting. They're among the best, I think, maybe ever. So as soon as I saw Mariusz's post on my Facebook feed, I saw a lengthy post, and I thought, like, even before I started reading it, I thought, like, oh, I think I know what this is, and it's a shame. I mean, I know there's been some debate of like, is this the end of the band? Is it just that he's left and they're going to carry on? We don't know. I did talk to him a little bit earlier today, and I know a little bit more of the situation, but I'm not going to obviously say anything. But yeah, it's just a shame because I think it's one of those situations where whatever he does with Lunatic Soul and et cetera, I'm sure it'll be great. Whatever they do, if they continue, will be good. I'm certainly willing to give it a chance and hear whatever they do next if they do anything, but it's just like not going to be the same. As cliche as that is to say, like it's not going to be the same.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, Jordan, thanks for getting some inside scoop and then withholding it from us. That's cool.
I'm very trust.
So for me, Riverside, I'm a fan of Riverside. But I'm not quite a fanatic. Like, I haven't like ripped open every single one of their albums, read the liner notes, gone into the deep dive. So I was just surprised because I just didn't realize that it was even a possibility of happening, especially when I read, it certainly sounded like there was some disagreements or tension or whatever. So it is disappointing because, I think we were talking in the chat, like, I don't know if I have a favorite album, but I don't think I've ever heard anything by Riverside that I haven't enjoyed. And and for me, the one blessing is now I didn't even shamefully know about Lunatic Soul. So now I have a whole nother catalog to dive into and to look forward to.
Yeah, that's been Mariusz's pet project. He doesn't like to call it a side project. It's just his other project. It's his other band. I can recall talking with him and at the release time of Identity, and he was expressing, I think, at that point in time, at least a little bit of frustration with feeling constrained by the expectations of the prog crowd in many ways, especially because in that album they really threw out some kind of pop elements and things like that. They had some extra keyboards and layers and things that weren't quite usually typical of Riverside. And I know for him that was stuff that he was feeling inspired to do and really wanting to be able to do that without feeling like somehow or other he wasn't meeting the expectations of fans. It makes me wonder if to a degree at that time as well, it was reflective of some tension within the band itself and what their expectations are. I don't know what to expect of the band because, I understand too, and I'm not sure I knew about it right away or I read it briefly and forgot, but I was reminded today that I'm not sure how to pronounce the first name, Maciej, Meller. He's also announced his departure from Riverside. So it's basically 2 members left of the band at this point. And yeah, so yeah, that kind of snuck out there, and he just kind of flowed out quietly in Mariusz's wake. Mariusz Possessive is a hard name to say. I stumble over it every time.
So it's really curious to me that you just mentioned that little tidbit, Dave, about being constrained in the band that you've basically built. And because as soon as I read the announcement, I started thinking about Steven Wilson. And I recently, because of what we've been doing on the Palaver, we did Porcupine Tree last year. We did some other Steven Wilson stuff. Dave, you were part of that episode that will have come out eventually. And we recently did some force ranking, which we are up to do. And I went back to listen to the Steven Wilson catalog, particularly earlier albums in the catalog. And now I had the context of what Porcupine Tree started as, what it evolved to, and kind of where his solo career started. And that was exactly what I thought about Riverside, is that, the band evolves to a certain point and you kind of get boxed in a little bit. And the fans, which I think we've talked about on episode 1, or maybe it was episode 2, I missed episode 1, where, the fans all of a sudden start to gatekeep on what you can and can't do and be critical. And, artistically, these folks need a different outlet. And so it's interesting to think about that because that makes a lot of sense overall.
Yeah, I remember when it was To the Bone was coming out and Permeating was like, I had the whole album, and I remember people were so upset because Permeating was so like poppy and happy. And I remember thinking, like, why are you begrudging him because he wrote a happy song for once? Like, but I think that's the question is, in both of these cases, obviously they're like, everyone knows like Porcupine Tree literally was his bedroom like project. It was his band. Whatever the other people wrote, and does he get more credit for like everything when he didn't do everything, but he did most things? I don't know. So with Mariusz, obviously he's the voice of it. He's the bassist. I always assumed that he wrote pretty much everything for Riverside. I don't know if that, how true that is. I assume he did. So in that sense, I think it is kind of like if he's gone, like the songwriting, the style, not just the voice and the bass playing, but like the whole vibe would be gone. But the other thing I wanted to mention kind of in response to Paul is, and famously, I always like talk about this, is I cannot stand parasocial relationships. So, and again, like doing what we do, we know these people to a degree. We know musicians, so we kind of see it differently than just like a fan. I'm not saying that at all like elitism or anything, but like I adore Riverside, but it's not my band. This is not my fight. This is not like I don't have any ownership over what happens with them. And like I just don't like that entitlement that fans can have, that idea of like this was wrong or right, and it's like the all-sided perspective and the judgment, and it's like, it'll be a shame if Riverside doesn't continue, but there's a billion other bands that I'll listen to. I know like it'll be okay.
There's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
It's constantly discovering things, and I find out these bands have been around for 10 years. 15 years, I'm going, how the hell have I not even heard their name?
Yeah.
But it happens. So the discovery is a fun part of it. But I'm with you. And it's interesting because just before we got onto this, I did a quick scan through Wikipedia, through the discography for Riverside, just to see like, okay, now I recognize that sometimes the way credits are listed in bands may or may not be reflective on the albums as the reality of the creation of each of the song. That to a degree, at some point, they go, let's just be egalitarian about it. And we just say the song was created by everybody every time. That's cool. Or they settle on lyrics by Peart, music by Lee and Lifeson. And that's how they roll with it for the sake of royalties, I'm sure, to a large degree, and just sharing credit. Anyway, that being said, recognizing that earlier albums tended to credit lyrics to Duda and the rest of it composed by Riverside until about the last 3 albums. And then it started saying pretty much all songs written, created, or whatever composed by Mariusz Duda. And so I if that is reflective of reality, then to a degree, it's very much was his band for the last several albums, last 3 or 4 maybe. And if he wants to wander off and go do something else, he can, and he's been doing through Lunatic Soul. And sure, the band can carry on the name without him. I don't think he has a right to dissolve the name any more than, I don't know, to pick a name out of thin air. Roger Waters, that, they can continue, but it's almost a guarantee they're not going to sound very much the same unless they sound a bit more like their earlier days than they have recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good. I think that kind of goes into the discussion we're having of like, what is the difference when certain major members leave or not? Because obviously Roger Waters was a huge part of Pink Floyd since the beginning and almost until the end. But like Gilmour was a co-vocalist. He was, his guitar work is just as part of the quintessential Pink Floyd sound as anything else. So I think in the case of like a Steven Wilson or Mariusz Duda leaving, the whole is bigger because it's more of like this person was it. Whereas with Waters, it's like you were half of the main kind of vocal, at least like the main idea. I think was Waters and Gilmour in terms of what people think.
Yeah. Well, at least in the neo-prog world, if I could use that term, I don't think I could imagine any hole bigger to fill than like say when Fish left Marillion, right? I mean I've told the story a couple times. It was middle of college. It was between sophomore and junior year. I just discovered Marillion, and my friend Joe Beauclair and I got together one night after I finished my job at Sears, Roebuck and Company, and he had just picked up Season's End. I think he picked it up on vinyl at the record store. We had really only been exposed to the first 4 Marillion albums, literally just the last couple of months getting into them. And we grab a pizza and we go to his house, and he's like fidgeting with the pizza and getting the album together. And I'm looking at the gatefold and I'm going, yo, who's this Steve Hogarth guy? Like, and where did Fish go? Right? We didn't even know. That's how. And here we are all these years later, right? And it's in a way, like this could be controversial, but Steve Hogarth's contributions to Marillion dwarf those of what Fish did. Only those first 4 albums, right? So, and that doesn't take those are 4 exceptional albums. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, and then there's the some people bat an eye at this with progressive rock, but I consider Styx to be a American progressive rock. And Dennis DeYoung left, and you thought, what is ever going to happen to this band again? And here, the new guy who replaced him has been in the band longer than Dennis ever was, and they've actually done a lot of really great stuff in the more recent years. Originally, so it as big of a hole as it may seem with Riverside, you wonder, do the right 2 people come in and take them somewhere else?
I chuckle how you use the word left to describe DeYoung's departure with such this nice voluntary tone to it. Ever the diplomat, Paul. Depends on who wrote that story, I guess.
I guess
right?
it does. I guess it does. You're right.
Yeah. The Marillion's a great example, too, in many ways, because I know that there's still the joke among the band themselves, and you ask H, and he'll say, I'm still the new guy. And, having been to a couple Marillion weekends, and especially I know in Leicester, they've got all these Marillion tribute bands that show up and are playing in the local clubs and pubs and stuff. And there's such a heavy focus still on the Fish material. So you can tell the really, really old fans. Paul, had even less experience with them than you did at the time that Season's End came out. I knew Misplaced Childhood because, as one might guess, given my daughter's name, I'd loved the song Kaylee. And so eventually I found somebody that had that album that I could borrow it for a little while and then make a bootleg copy and enjoy. And I largely enjoyed so much of it. And, it also gave me a very throwback feel to 70s Genesis, which, I think Marillion sounded a lot alike at that time. And even Fish, his vocals at times would have a Peter Gabriel quality to them. But then, the local newspaper, the good old Daily Local News back in Chester County, actually had a review of Season's End. And I'm like, oh, I need to check this out, I think. I want to see what's going on here. And yeah, so for me, it's almost like Marillion kind of began more for me with Hogarth than it did with Fish. And I'll give them credit. I mean, for the band to not only survive, but thrive with such a change in the creative forces within it over all these years. It's, not many bands can pull that off very well, that I can think of maybe 1 or 2 examples that may equate with that. But, Van Halen maybe. But although the third time was not a charm. But
well,
yeah.
It was hell of a live show, I'll tell you that.
On that. Yeah, this is true. Sharon is absolutely, having seen Extreme only fairly recently, and even in his older days, watching him run around, went, okay, I exactly know why Van Halen wanted him at this point in time. And that was still him, 30 years on, 40 years on. Jesus. Anyway, but at the same time, that Fish still has that much of an impact on the band. So that's kudos to the rest of the guys in Marillion for, on 2 occasions, picking out basically forces of nature to be their frontmen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you both said that, because that's what I was going to say too when Paul initially mentioned Marillion. And, as the young guy here at the young age of 38, I discovered Marillion. The first Marillion album I heard was Happiness is the Road with This Train is My Light, which I love that song. So I didn't know the Fish stuff until years later. And I think it's very much the rarest situation where obviously H has been there for far longer. So it's almost unfair to compare the 2 chapters. But I do prefer Marillion's newer stuff. I do prefer his voice. And even though that's a matter of opinion, I think, as you said, Dave, it's kind of like Marillion didn't really become Marillion as its own real thing until Fish left, because then they got past the inevitable Genesis comparisons. So it's like they almost needed somebody who didn't sound like Gabriel to turn them into like they're a proper new thing. Not to like, diminish the first four albums. But you know what I mean? Like Marillion as we think of them wouldn't have happened if Fish didn't leave.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Fair point. Who knows where they would be at this point if they hadn't split? Who knows where he would have been?
And in the meanwhile, they redefined, quite frankly, how the music industry operates outside of a record label.
Right. That basically, I don't know if the inventors, but certainly the perfecters of crowd funding.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess like them and Radiohead kind of similar kind of idea of like, we're going to take ownership of this. Yeah.
I don't blame them. The model works for them, so why not?
Yeah.
I think to that, though, that also speaks to the idea that the band, the conceptually, lyrically, Fish and Hogarth obviously are the lead guys in those areas for them. I don't know that I can speak with any intelligence at all over to what degree Fish was part of the compositional process other than the vocal parts. My impression has been that the band basically pulls together a lot of music through jamming and things like that and getting ideas, and then eventually they assemble songs, and Hogarth joins in a little bit later to start putting in the vocal parts. So he's not as involved. And I think to a degree, then what that says is part of the reason the band survived was the evolution of the musicians themselves, the main guys. Because Hogarth's a musician too, but that main core of musicians that were present for both incarnations, it was largely still them, and with a different fifth component, and they blended that fifth component in, and either they were already starting to evolve or that fifth component kind of pulled them in a certain direction and they evolved according to that. So I think that's part of the reason why a band like that can survive that kind of departure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'd be interesting to see, but I wonder how well each vocalist would work with the other era's music. Because like in early Marillion, kind of like early IQ even more so, but it's a little like harsher, it's a little rougher. Like early Marillion is kind of like synth rock, art rock. It's a little like more cold. And now they're a lot more like dreamy and transcendental, which I don't think Fish's voice would work as well. And I don't think Hogarth's voice would work as well if he sang like Misplaced Childhood. So it's kind of like, yeah, like it all had to happen kind of at once.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because in my previous study of Marillion and their history, I do think when Fish left, there was this sort of like idea around like, we need to write songs and not just bits of songs and like smash them together. But however, and actually like there, I mean, the Fish part of the Fish catalog, there's some really cool kind of, I don't know if it's dreamy or transcendent, but it's cool. And I think that's the beauty and the potential of these things happening is now you have these two separate catalogs that are in their own right absolutely fantastic. Whether it's Fish, Marillion, and who knows what happens, but it's wonderful to have that much music from such great, important and intentional artists.
And Fish has his own great catalog too. So in many ways, it's not all that different than say after the split between Genesis and Peter Gabriel's. Now suddenly you had two camps,
right,
that were both putting out some great music. Differing from what they originally did. I know it took Genesis a little longer time to evolve away from that English pastoral prog that they were known for and more into that pop direction. But here they were both putting stuff out, and you can think like in '86, two of the biggest albums for that year were still those guys.
Yeah.
It just Gabriel by himself and the other three by themselves, and Steve Hack had gone, shit, what did I go wrong?
Hey, he was in GTR at the time. So
he was
like
in GTR that
he was
year,
doing
yes.
all right.
Don't remind him. Sorry, Steve. No, actually, I really enjoyed that album, but
It was,
have the
you know,
success.
that's the whole prog pop, right? It was just kind of, it was cool, but it was also kind of finagled. I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't. It had a pretty cool mix of people in it, just maybe not quite exactly the mix you would want. And I think that's reflected in the fact that after one album, they went, yeah, we're done.
Yeah. But pound for pound, I think The Hunter and When the Heart Rules the Mind, it's up there with any of the prog pop stuff that, you know, we talked about before. So,
Yeah, on this little brief detour, I'll chime in with I love imagining, and I certainly love the two instrumentals.
yeah.
Interestingly
Ironic,
enough,
based on our earlier
yeah,
conversation.
yeah, really. And I was fairly recently digging through the back Yes catalog and came across, I think, the bonus edition of, I think it was Tormato, where all of a sudden one of the songs comes up there and it's playing. I'm like, hold it. This is a version of Sketches in the Sun with vocals. Like, what's happening here? Wait, you mean he didn't write that song for GTR? Fuck. All right. It's such a weird moment.
Well,
Anyway.
you know, there's another a whole, I mean, episode on changing personnel is Yes, right? Like every time a member left, you could have made the argument like, oh my gosh, like how are they going to replace that person? And you know, it seems like they just kept finding not necessarily like, you know, better, but just people who complemented wherever the band was going and helped it. But like I don't know who, I mean, who is the hardest member in the history of Yes to replace? Is it, you know, Peter Banks? I mean, like you replace Peter Banks with Steve Howe, who is like a singular guitarist, right? But then Bill Bruford leaves. And Alan White is no slouch, but he's so different than Bill Bruford. Tony Kaye, Rick Wakeman, Patrick Moraz, like it just like, I mean, then you get to the point where John Anderson leaves, and you're like, okay, you know. But like, who is the hardest person to replace in that band?
I once upon a time might have said Anderson because he was the spacey hippie of the band with the words and the lyrics and all that stuff, and that voice of his. You know, I can certainly appreciate. Oh crap! Got a blank of his name. Producer boy.
Raven? Or Trevor Horn?
Trevor Horn. Thank you. Trevor Horn did his best to try and fill in pretty well on drama. He did all right. I don't think it was a train wreck or anything like that. And then somewhere along the line, they discovered that somebody had cloned John Anderson and named him. I'm going to blank on his name too. The other Anderson,
John Davison. Yes,
John Dave. Oh, that's right, John Davison. That's it. Something son. Yeah, they cloned John Anderson, called him John Davison, and threw him in there. And oh, okay then. I guess we're all right. But the lyrics will maybe never quite be the same.
That is for sure. I mean, we have a better chance of understanding what they're about now.
Yes.
But
I don't know that was ever about understanding. Yes, was it? I mean,
I agree.
Spirit.
Tales from the Topographic Oceans. They didn't understand what they were doing.
Wake really didn't.
No, he was too distracted picking out capes.
I think it's an interesting example though, because I mean, Yes, you know, Yes may be the most beloved of all the original bands in terms of like the diehards and I think with Anderson, it's a case of not only like the voice and lyrics, but just the vibe, the stage presence, where like the personality of John Anderson on stage was a part of Yes in a way that transcends like a lot of typical just kind of like frontman energy and getting the crowd like. Anderson had like a presence when he was on stage that I could understand people arguing that if you don't have that, it's not Yes.
No, you can't underestimate the value of a great frontman.
Yeah, and it is kind of jarring sometimes when you see Yes now because Steve Howe kind of plays MC, and sometimes to me that's just awkward. You know, it's like they play this amazing song and then like Steve Howe becomes a game show host and starts talking to the audience. I do want to shout out to Benoit David, who was the who took the reins for a little while, and in my opinion, performed the defining version of "Fly From Here." I'm not a real big fan of the fact that they redid it, and I'm also even less of a fan that they basically pulled the original off of all streaming services and places. Yeah, because it was just better with Benoit David, and his stuff with them, I think, was his live stuff was awesome. Although I never saw him live, so I don't know if he got to do the emceeing or if it was a Steve Howe thing. But yeah, and he was pretty spectacular in Mystery too. So
yeah, well, and you're right. It is kind of awkward. I mean, Howe as a game show host makes a great guitar player, but
I just imagine him as a full DJ or like at a rap battle. He's like the MC. Like, I mean, I'm seeing John Anderson and the Band Geeks on Saturday, and I would make the argument that they're doing Yes better than Yes is doing Yes now. I mean, again, like completely understandable. But the last time I saw Yes, I guess it was a few months ago. Like, how noticeably slows down his playing, which again I completely understand. But if you're out there doing it, like, maybe I don't know. I won't continue my thought, but it's like I think the cover band is now doing it better than the original band. So yeah, it's just kind of awkward, I think, to see modern Yes now in general.
what I'll say about that, I think, is now granted, Anderson's last album was an amazing album with a shit cover. I don't know what the hell they were thinking there, but okay, sure. But the songs are really, really good, and sometimes very, very classically Yes styled. More so, I agree that I think what current Yes has sounded like. I have yet to check out the newest song, so I'm going to get to that shortly. But I think the big difference probably there comes again down to sort of the same thing that helped Marillion sort of survive and thrive, is that you still basically had that core of composers there, and they were clearly blessed with more than just a few ideas. Yes, right now is mostly people who were not in Yes much, although at this point in time, maybe they've been in there so long they were there more than the classic group was anyway. But they aren't, if they're still composing more as a group, and Hal was balanced out by the Wakemans and the Brufords and the Andersons and Squires and all that stuff in a way that is different than he is balanced out now, assuming he's balanced out at all. And the Band Geeks are getting to do a lot of the Yes classics on a regular basis too. So they're like honing their chops on that as a big chunk, I'm sure, of their show, because that's what it is. Not that Yes isn't doing the same thing, but you know what I mean? Like, I think to a degree, walking in as people to play it versus composing new stuff can be very different kind of animal.
yeah, and to that point, Dave, I feel like I might misspeak here, but I believe the last two Yes records, the majority of the writing has been Billy Sherwood and John Davison, and Steve Howe's been in like the producer seat, and it's almost like, kind of like Kansas. Kansas still has two original members who, for health reasons aren't always performing with the band, but as that band creates new material, it's kind of going through, the board of directors, if you will, right? So there's a quality control. There's a kind of thing. We did an episode where we did a steel cage match between Trevor Rabin's Rio, John Anderson and the Band Geeks album, and the latest Yes album, Mirror to the Sky. And it was a lot of fun to just like talk about all three of those albums together. It really reveals kind of like your own personal bias about, if you're in one of the camps or not. But like the thing that's really cool about Yes is that while I agree with you, Jordan. The last time I saw Yes live, I was like, okay, I would go so far as to say that, like, my my favorite Yes tribute band, Total Mass Retain, is doing some of their songs better than they're doing live. But it's just a different vibe. Their latest like 3 albums, they're really progressing in songwriting and taking, the Yes music somewhere different, somewhere that doesn't harken you back to, the Union days or the Tales from Topographical Ocean days. Like, they're really doing something new and unique, and there is something really, really cool about that when they deliver it. And I'm excited to see your reaction, Dave, to their new single, because I'm kind of a fan myself. So.
All right. Yeah, I will say that album was definitely interesting. It definitely was. A lot of it was diverging from what you would expect to be standard Yes songs and fare. Not all of it worked for me as much as I might have liked, but the stuff that worked for me worked really well. I probably also, though, that was probably when I could think of it, Mirror to the Sky. The title track was very classically Yes. That was my favorite song off of that. But there were some things, a couple times I'm listening, I'm going, God, this doesn't even hardly sound like classic Yes anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like, I mean, it's easy to be very cynical. And again, I did not grow up with Yes, so it's almost like I have no right to even talk about the history of Yes, because I came into it in like 2000 when I was 13. But to me, it just, because like so many members are gone for one reason or another. So to me, it's easy to be kind of cynical and say, like, are you just doing this for the money? Like, are you doing this to keep the name going? Do you really have anything artistically to provide anymore? And if they do, then more power to them. But just again, like watching the last show, I almost felt like it was just like pandering to the people who grew up with it, and it's almost like they're a tribute act of themselves, or it's almost like a it's gonna sound terrible, but like a Chuck E. Cheese animatronic. Like, we're just gonna line this up and we're gonna perform the stuff. But again, I have no right to like speak. I don't want to sound like a jackass or parasocial or anything going back to that. It's just, is there anything new? And if so, go for it. But if not, like, why are we still doing this?
I love the animatronics idea. How's it going, Philadelphia?
The MC. He's the MC now.
We're so glad to be here. No, but I'm with you. But I'm going to be honest. I think to a large degree that the pandering to the older crowd is because that's what the crowd's demanding.
Yeah.
They don't. So many of them could give a rat's ass about anything Yes has done since about 1983, and they're there because they want to hear Roundabout.
Ooh.
Yeah. And if you have you still have the audience, you still got them. You can still make the money. Go for it, I guess.
Yeah, which God bless them. If that's what you want to see them play, I get it. I understand that. I think at a certain point, a band's career gets so long that they've got so many kind of obligatory songs to play that they fill the setup with them, and to take some of those out, there's always somebody walking like, they didn't play this. They didn't play Limelight.
I will say this. I especially when we talk about, I mean, Jordan, you're saying, you have no right to talk about the lore or whatever. Like, I was born the year that the Yes album came out, right? So like, I mean, this is an old band, and these bands were so like, and what I'm trying to get at is like, Genesis is a great example. I think by the time Peter Gabriel left the band, they were like $600,000 in debt still, and they were like still trying to like make ends meet. So this guys that are in their 70s, I sometimes have a tough time thinking they're just doing it for the money. I think there is sort of this idea of, they all have their own crew, like they've got the live stage, so there's like this family that they probably want to help provide for. But I also think that, if you're in your 70s and you're still jumping on a bus to drive around, the countryside to play in theaters, you're doing it because your heart's in it, and you want to do it. And especially, these dudes have been doing it since, we were all born.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Like,
like
I can't
McCartney.
disagree with that. What was that, Jordan?
I'm sorry, yeah, I was just saying it's like Paul McCartney. You know, he doesn't have anything left to prove. Like he is
Right.
goated, but he loves what he's doing. So you know, you don't want to take that away from him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a certain point for me that like I have been on record as saying, I don't know if I've been on record in the interwebs, but I know I've been on record at some places saying things like, I don't have so much respect for the bands that just do forever the nostalgia tours. And I guess to a degree, and there's certain reality that mostly because I guess I see it as them having kind of just given up artistically, and they're no longer not viable. What's the word I'm looking for? They're no longer a vital creative force. So they're just, okay, let's just play this stuff forever and ever and ever. Not naming names, Billy Joel. But at a certain degree too, like, you know, I almost make my own point or make their point for them. Like when your catalog gets so filled up with must-play songs, you know, if you're going on tour, the fans want that stuff. And maybe at a certain degree, at some point, you're satisfied with the work you've done and you're going, I don't need to keep creating. Maybe I don't have any ideas I really feel are worthy of putting on paper and putting into music anymore, because like I keep coming up with things I feel like I recycled my old stuff. And fair enough, at some point in time, you go, and I need to make a living. Now, if you're Billy Joel, you probably have got so much money, you never need to worry about touring again. But if you're, hey, one of these prog bands in their 70s, you know,
Yeah.
you might need to feed yourself.
Yeah, you might as well.
I have to imagine it becomes a job at some point. Although I question whether Billy Joel had any money, because he got screwed over so badly, and he's really got no rights to any of his songs. So I feel like that's why he was always playing Madison Square Garden every month, because he was like, yeah, I need to make another $500,000 or $1 million every month to all that.
I wonder what's ever gone through his head, having heard what Taylor Swift did, where she just re-recorded all her stuff to get the rights back, and he's going, huh, I could have done that.
Yeah. Knows what he's doing.
Well, and I think the running joke with Rick Wakeman is that, you know, he's touring because he still owes alimony to his five ex-wives. So
Oh wait, you mean that album, The Six Wives of Henry the Eighth, was that
Henry.
autobiographical?
it might have been.
Damn, I didn't know that.
Awesome capes.
Revelations. Circling back to our original topic, though, in the moment, because I think, yes, you're right. They're one of those weird outliers that I think the credit for the creative force behind it is so distributed evenly throughout the various members over the years that it's hard to say that there's just one person driving it. But I'm interested, and I now, with some of the hubbub and some of the dust settling and other comments by members too, I'm almost left thinking of like with Mariusz leaving Riverside, and I'm like, my brain starts to speculate. I wonder what else is going on or what has happened. I know I saw a statement that I read tonight from their keyboard player who was very diplomatic and basically said, yeah, you know, there was some shit going on in the band basically, and there was some conflicts, but I wasn't part of that. Like, okay. He's kind of like, love you guys. I'm going to let you all ahead and spend time under the bus by yourselves. I'm going over here and watch it. Took his bucket of popcorn and left. But the idea that did it devolve into something similar to the Pink Floyd thing? Because I think for Floyd, it's always been my take, and I am on record on the interweb saying this, that I think it was very much that Waters really, I think, has a very strong narcissistic streak in him, did not like sharing credit, did not like to acknowledge that, yes, you know what, dude, you might have been the driving lyrical force and maybe the conceptual force, but that band didn't exist without the contributions of the other musicians. You know, you guys made all that music together. And yeah, I know you sometimes shared vocals with Gilmore, which was to me creatively largely a mistake, because I'm sorry, Waters, you can't sing. Not like I have no I have no fucks to give to Roger Waters. But I think that's largely what started to erode the band, is he kept taking more and more creative control. And I think to a degree, the other guys were okay with sort of saying, hey, look, you play a little bit, bring some ideas. will help you flesh them out. And at a certain point, he just wanted it to be everything. He wanted it to be the Roger Waters show. He wanted to be the lead vocalist. I get it. Okay, it's cool when you're playing yourself in the wall. Oh, now you want to play yourself again in the final. Okay. But it makes me worried. Like, shoot, I would hate to think that that's similar to what happened with Riverside to a degree, that at some point in time, Mariusz was so asserting himself that the rest of the band was feeling left behind and pushed aside. And is that what the credits were reflecting, that he was taking over? Was he the only one really contributing and like the only one really bringing something to the table? And he started to resent the others for not carrying their weight. And at a certain point, he says, screw this, man. I'm just going to go do all my own stuff that I want to do and not have to worry about this anymore. I don't know. What do you guys think? I hate to speculate too much because I don't want to unintentionally cast aspersions upon Mariusz, but I'm curious what you...
I think you should just keep speculating, Dave, and then we can just watch Jordan's facial expressions and we can figure out what if...
How much money have you lost at poker, Jordan?
Well, I won't say. No, I mean, it's like what's interesting is as I told you earlier today, I'm reading that book, Shine On, like the oral history of Pink Floyd, going through like Syd Barrett and like all ex-girlfriends, and just like, it's an oral history. It's a bunch of interviews. But they're talking about how Roger Waters was kind of being a narcissist and kind of a jerk, like from the get-go. Like between album 1 and 2, he was already kind of doing that. And I think he's famously like one of rock's biggest assholes, lack of a better way to put it. Which is fascinating because I've always, like, especially in recent years, I've said, like, you helped lead one of the biggest rock bands ever. What are you miserable about? Like, what are you upset about?
You can't stand the idea that they carried on with that name without him.
Syd was kind of I don't want to use first names. Syd Barrett, I don't know him. I always hate when people do that. Yeah, but Syd Barrett, it was like he was the leader at the start, kind of. So, yeah, I mean, I think going back to Mariusz, and yeah, like we shouldn't speculate too much, but I think I don't think he was like that at the start for sure, because I think this would have happened sooner if he was doing that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just sounds like it's a tragic kind of situation.
What do you think, Paul?
I'm probably least qualified to speculate about the breakup of Riverside than any other band. But yeah, I mean, kind of what I've been reading online, it sounds kind of like just what Jordan said. Whatever it was, it just kind of got to the point where Mariusz realizes, I don't really need to do this anymore. I can just do my own thing over here and be just as happy and just as fruitful. So,
yeah, that seems reasonable. Yeah, and I do end up feeling bad for the guys left behind in some of these bands at times. I think Floyd, I don't know that they felt too terrible about it. They were probably like,
ooh,
yeah, fine.
So it is. There's a deep, dark history between Roger Waters and Richard Wright, and there was some bad shit that went on there. So I think it was less. All right, like I think it was pretty. I think there were many years of healing that were required in there, and it's interesting because I will say this. While I do agree with the assertion that Roger Waters may be the biggest asshole in rock music, he did. I mean, like, he is largely responsible for the lyrical content of some of the most classic albums of all time, and unfortunately, it's just like his inability to like cope with the collaborative nature of all of that was kind of the downfall, and seems to be to continue to be the downfall. But
yeah.
But,
what a
yeah,
shame to taint his legacy with his personality.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah. I'd say, at least as far as the running for the biggest asshole in rock, just checking. Ted Nugent's still alive?
Yeah.
Okay. Roger's got competition, but...
This could be a whole nother episode.
Right?
There's also the Ronnie Radke from Falling in Reverse, but that's another.
Oops.
That's not prog at all or anything. So.
No.
I think one of the bands we'd be remiss not to talk about with this whole kind of conversation though is Spock's Beard. Not only because like their history obviously mirrored Genesis of like, I mean, concept album, kind of similar themes, drummer takes over, new era. They carry on pretty successfully. And I mean, Spock's Beard have 3 clear phases and fortunately they're still going. I overall like each phase less than the last one. I definitely think the Neal Wars era is the best era, but I think they've been carrying on successfully, creatively with Nick DiVirgilio and then obviously now Ted Leonard.
Yeah, that's one of the ones you read my mind a little bit that I had thinking about, because I know, at least my understanding has been, and my memory says that Neal was such a primary creative force in that band. I don't know of anything that said that the split was rancorous. It was a matter of he found Jesus and decided he needed to do Jesus stuff, and the band wasn't going to do that. So he went off to do his own thing. But I know a lot of them were probably left there going, oh, shit, what do we do now? And they recovered pretty well. All things given, they've put out some good quality stuff during that time. And you're right, DiVirgilio, Ted Leonard have always had a very talented band, and I certainly enjoyed the most recent album, I think, more than a lot of them I'd heard in a while. But they've been able to do it in such a fascinating way where it's like they keep sort of changing up the writing core, but the composing creative core. Whether it's John, whose name I can never remember, but it begins with an M. M?
B.
B? Oh, yeah.
I don't want to mispronounce his last name. I know it's John. I'll say John B. I know who you're talking about. Because
you're ahead of me if you remember it at the moment.
The three of them, and he formed the Pattern Seeking Animals.
Yeah, right. And they put out some really good stuff too. And then this last one is largely Ryo Okamoto.
Yeah.
And another guy whose name's somebody White, I think. Somebody White? Is that last name? My memory's for shit tonight, but like really cool album. And somehow they keep coming back and they're still Spock's Beard. Like they haven't really, for good or bad, made any wild jumps style-wise. And I guess that's the interesting thing too, when you start shifting stuff up after a main creator leaves. Are you making attempts to try and maintain the band's sound, or do you let it evolve largely? Because Genesis obviously evolved quite a bit over time after Peter left, and then after Steve Hackett left. The only band that, for whatever reason, no, we're not replacing anybody. Until Phil left and Tony and Mike looked at each other and said, fuck, I don't want to sing. So,
and we know how well that went.
Wow. Okay.
Oh.
And, that could be a Prog on Trial episode. That we would have 2 Genesis albums in there. So
fair enough.
So
that's a sneak preview for those out there listening and watching of something you may get as another feature with us.
I'm definitely not educated enough on Spock's Beard to like really make any like cogent opinions. Is that even a right phrase of words to use? Mm-hmm. But thank you. But and I love hearing about these 3 phases, because Spock's Beard currently is on the board of bands that I need to start at the beginning and go through, right? And every time I grab a song and listen, I can't really decipher like anything that would make me think, oh, this is from this era or that era. So I'm still kind of piecing it together. But one thing that I notice when I look on like the Wikipedia timeline of members is there is a significant amount of overlap with a lot of them. So I wonder, like, if it does that enable, even though the creative force is shifting, does that overlap of members help keep the band on that same progressive tangent, rather, even though they may be in specific eras? Curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think so, because because Nick was there. I mean, obviously gone now, but he was there since the beginning. Alan Morse obviously is his brother, Neal's brother. Dave Miros, I think, was there from the start. So it is kind of a situation of like the core, the legacy characters, the legacy members are carrying through the whole thing. But yeah, and I know for a fact, because like Snow was obviously the last thing Neal did, which I am on record saying that the best thing Neal Morse has ever done and the best thing Spock Spirit has ever done. I adore that album. But I know, like, during the making of that, when Neal Morse decided to leave, they did kind of go like, oh shit, what are we going to do? And it's interesting. I don't know if I'm deviating, Paul, from what you asked. Tell me if I am. But I kind of see like the second phase of Spock Spirit and Genesis in the same way, which is it's still proggy, it still sounds similar, but I think with the absence of Morse and Gabriel, they lost a little bit of like the quirky, strange, like just weirdness. Again, I should write like a book or something on the parallels there or something. But I think they had their vibe like established well enough that even though they switched like lead singers, and that's pretty, I mean, obviously like Jimmy Keegan came in when Nick DiVirgilio took over, but I think like the core of the band, similar to Genesis, was still there. So there wasn't as much of like a risk for them to deviate wildly because they almost could.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing you hit on, Paul, is the idea that that carryover of members does help a lot with continuity.
Yeah.
Which then again makes Marillion like this weird outlier, because 4 out of 5 members were still the same. And yet they came up with this whole different version of Marillion. And, you know, Genesis evolved a little bit more with each member shaved off, you know, that eventually they ended up, you know, Invisible Touch, which, you know, hardly anybody who might have heard that song and only knew everything up to Lamb Lies on Broadway would have been like, what's happening here? Like this isn't the same band. But so it's interesting how that can feed continuity or not. And that, of course, goes back to that age-old, you know, debate about, you know, evolution versus fan service. Do you stay mostly the same to keep fans coming back and happy? Or do you evolve over time to follow your muse, or maybe in the hopes of expanding your sound and possibly bringing in new members, but running the risk of losing old fans? So yeah, it's kind of, I almost want to do a study at some point and say, what ends up being the deciding factor of how these bands go? You know, is it just the attitudes of the members that, hey, we want to keep our core sound? I think of a band, and then there's like other versions of bands losing key members, not because somebody got mad and left, not because somebody got fired or whatever, but because they died.
Yeah.
You know, like, and you have those happening, and then now somebody else has got to come in and fill shoes. You know, we're watching that in some degree happening real time with Rush. Whether that expands beyond a tour and into new music, we don't know. But I certainly get the impression Geddy and Alex have both within them an itch to create some new music, because it's been a very long time since they did. And if that's what happens, then the world of Rush fans has to brace themselves for Annika is now an actual permanent member of Rush, not just somebody that they got to tour with them. Big Train comes to mind very much as well, too, with the loss of David Longdon and then Alberto Bravin coming in. But besides that, it's also worth noting, and I remember paying attention, like basically at the beginning of this decade, almost the entirety of the band had turned over from what had been traditionally, with the exception of Greg Spaulding. So it's like, and that's why I feel so much like, you know, this newest album is what it is, because it's the new band has gelled, you know, and all the pieces that were brought in, you know, within the last 5-6 years are now found their footing, became a cohesive unit, and wow, look at the result. But to a large degree, there's still very much that core Big Train elements to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because David, like, I think David is thought of as like the voice of Big Train, or that's like the quote unquote classic era, but he didn't come in until the Underfall Yard, which was, half a dozen albums in or so. So it's just interesting. Like that's a case of like the not the focal point, but like the singer not being the first singer. I don't even know if he was the second singer. I know Sean Filkins was before him. It's the guy's name. I like, again, it's interesting because it goes back into what we're like, it brought into the conversation of, is it like the original member that is a big deal when they leave? Is it like the most quote unquote important? Is the most renowned? Because like, yeah, he shows that you don't have to be an original member or even close to it to still have that impact when you leave or when you pass away.
Yeah, there's a if you're young enough or old enough, depending on your point of view, I guess, to have gotten the Yes box set in the early '90s with like the video that like did the whole like Union tour, kind of interviewing all the guys. Rick Wakeman says what I think is famous, but he basically says that he envisions a time when the band Yes will be completely different, and it will be the members of Yes at that time who are charged with taking the music and moving it forward. And like Big Big Train just kind of lives that like perpetually. It's pretty impressive that the rotating door for whichever reason, and the people in the band are charged with creating Big Big Train music, and it's impressive.
I guess at some point, these bands maybe carry on, like, I God forbid I bring this up, but the idea that somewhere along the line, and I first heard it voiced in this context by Gene Simmons, help me, but the idea of like a legacy band, like that the band will carry on this legacy of the music with eventually the original members are gone and it's just new members coming in, but it's somehow or other this spirit, this concept of the band that is carried on by newer generations.
Yeah, the band that comes to my mind with that, and I'm not like, I don't know that much about the original incarnation, but I know this was a formal like passing of the torch, was Gong, because David Allen knew he was dying, I believe, and they even had that album title, Rejoice I'm Dead, and then Kavis from Knife World took over, and now they kind of sound a lot like Knife World, more or less. Which is like, I love Knife World, I love Cardiac, everything he does I think is great. So I think it's an interesting case of like formally passing the torch, and it's almost like as a fan you can't begrudge them for continuing because this was what like the main force wanted, and they're doing a great job of it. And I think even with like Rush, because again, I give the fan base a lot of credit because they seem mostly on board with having like new members, not just the drummer, but touring keyboardist, and obviously like I can't speak for Neal Peart at all, but I imagine he would accept them carrying on. I imagine he'd sort of like, yeah, make a new album if you two feel right, if you have the right people. I almost feel like you can assume his blessing if they do carry on. So then what's there to be upset about as a fan?
Fair point.
Yeah. I feel like I mentioned Kansas before, right? I think they are in the process of doing that, where you have almost some nights you have a completely not original band performing their music, and the last two albums are largely written by people that are not original members of the band, and so there's sort of that idea, and it even sticks to some degree. I mean, like, Tommy Shaw is not an original member of Styx, but he is obviously someone who is considered like the one. But he and Yankovic, I can't think of his first name. They're the two of them are largely writing the music. So it's really quite interesting to that concept. And Jordan, you're right on. Like, I discovered Gong at Progstock. I mean, shamefully, right? And I love them, and I now love the the passing of the torch version of the band, right? So it's possible.
Hey, and for my money, whether Tommy Shaw was an original member of the band or not, that man is responsible for Renegade. So that's all he needs. He's got a lifetime membership, whatever goes on. He cannot kick him out of the band. Right, that there. And the funny thing about it is the story, I don't know if you've ever heard this story. The story with writing Renegade was actually partly came out of him listening to Alan Parsons' Project, if you can believe that.
Wow.
Like, okay, so,
Wow.
if you doubt their prog cred, well, I mean, hell, he created one of the greatest rock anthems of all time out of listening to progressive music.
There you go.
So, still,
I've never listened to Styx, so I'm taking notes now. Where would I start?
Boy, Jordan, if I recall, you're a fan of Supertramp, right? And yeah, I think you'd love Styx. Yeah.
Okay. Then.
I would not start with Kilroy Was Here, though. I'm just going to warn you.
That's the one I know. Like
No,
Mr. Roboto, I know. Like that's the big one.
Yeah, I'm a Kilroy Was Here apologist. Love it, but I don't think that's the best album to begin with.
shout out to Laura Ward, who is part of one of my our music nerd or music snobs group chat on that we have going with just a bunch of us that go to concerts and stuff. She is the Styx expert. She is like that's her favorite band. So I'll ask her where she would tell the noobs to start with Styx music. But
the next time I see Laura Ward, I'm gonna have to make sure I pick her brain about Styx. So that's awesome.
She's I forget their drummer's name, but I know she has been to his workshops on a couple occasions.
Oh yes,
yeah. So she is a true fan.
Sweet.
But yeah, so it's I think that's the hard part too. I can only imagine what it's like for somebody to have to walk in when somebody else has passed away and to know that they were so largely impactful. And now there's an expectation on you to do them justice, but you'll never be them.
Yeah. Todd Zuckerman is the drummer for Styx.
There you go.
He's incredible, and I wanted to just not leave this video with me going, I don't know who he is.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, it is it is I don't know how much editing goes on here, Dave, so if you want to cut this out you can. But the band that I currently play in, Green Eggs and Jam, while much smaller in its impact of the world, I play bass in the band, and I started filling in for the bass player who was ill with cancer, and he subsequently passed away, and the band was not. I don't know that the band was really committed to continuing, but they decided to keep going and decided to have me come into the band and play bass. And it is one of those things. And I knew the Dave Petrie, the former bass player. So it wasn't like I was just coming in and filling in, it was like coming in and filling in for, a fellow musician that I knew and respected and a friend. And you have that sense of, okay, it's you, right? It's going to be you. You can't sound like someone else, but you sort of have this like idea that you must honor, and that you will honor their, the spirit of what they gave to the music, and do that. So it would actually be, it's kind of probably a morbid topic to, put on our agenda of topics, but it would be interesting to interview artists who have, replaced deceased band members and pick their brains.
That'd be for the October edition.
But that whole section might just get cut out.
Nah.
That's a good idea. I like it.
But and it made me have an idea for something as well too. And now it came into my head and went out again. So we'll have to we'll see if it comes back later on when I edit all this and replay this section and see if it sparks that memory of, oh, that was an idea for an episode. and I've lost it. But it wasn't people filling in for deceased band members. But yeah, so
does it really matter who's playing bass? Is that what the episode was going to be? No, sorry.
It always matters. Dude, don't ask me about that. I love the bass players. They are oftentimes my favorite people. What they're doing is what I'm paying attention to. So
my favorite ever social media post by Dave Ayers is when he came and saw me play live, and he was like, "Not only am I surprised to see that Paul Zotter's playing bass, but I'm kind of offended that he's using a pick."
You got to do it like Getty, man. But
I don't know. I was thinking Paul McCartney. He used a pick, you know.
Oh,
I don't know.
Chris
That's what
Squire
happens.
did it
It's
too.
what happens when
Okay.
you start off on guitar. So
That makes sense. It's a natural progression. I fit that word in.
boom.
So I think, guys, it's possible we have chewed this particular subject to its final digestible state. I don't know what that means exactly, but
It works.
I started the metaphor and I had to finish it. So that was commitment on my part.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting thing to watch these things happen and how bands respond, what they do. I don't know what to expect if there's ever going to be a Riverside again. It sounds like the answer is no. But on the bright side, if most of what Riverside has done for several albums was actually Mariusz Duda, I guess we're still getting something that'll be close to that, but he may not want to play in that style anymore. So, I guess we'll all just have to deal with the grief.
Yeah, and who knows if if it is truly like disbanded, maybe we'll have 4 separate careers now of just like great stuff. Because I know the keyboardist, his last solo album from a few years ago was really good. I remember. So maybe it'll be like another Genesis, Gabriel, like Fish, Marillion. Like we're getting more good content now.
I love that prospect, Jordan. I think that could be the best thing that comes out of all of this. I'd like to just reclaim my last minute or two to take what is Jordan going to do on his summer vacation for 500. So Jordan, if you're going to write a book this summer, what's the topic?
Oh, I'm not writing the book.
I know you're not, but if you were going to write a book, like
board.
what's the topic going to be?
I don't know. I mean, I love writing about entire discographies. I'm still dying to write about like Between the Buried and Me, The Deer Hunter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like I don't know, like a book of artists that people need to know about or underappreciated. I don't know. I could get a lot of views and sales, I guess, by being like the naysayer or having the unpopular opinions. That would just make people hate me more than they may already do. So maybe that's not a good idea. I'll get hate sales or something.
And you will drink up their hatred like a fine wine.
Yeah, give me the clicks.
Do it. That would be fun. I am not a writer. I despise the process, admittedly, which is why I so seldom script too much of my stuff. And even when I script it, my brain keeps editing while I'm trying to read it, which means I keep tripping over, which is just an absolute maddening habit that I have.
It does remind me, though, Paul. I appreciate you mentioned that because it does remind me that my friend Frank, who's also my photographer at Prague, Frank White, who's like a very well-known rock photographer. He's got like Jersey Metal. He's amazing. But he was when I saw him, we covered Opeth and Catatonia in February for Prague, and he was kind of encouraging me to like pitch his publisher, and then maybe he and I could collaborate on something. He does like the photos, I do the writing. Nothing's happening, but that reminds me to like check back with him and say like, hey, I'm on summer break now. What's going on? What is your publisher?
Yeah.
What can we do?
Get on it. Because what else are you doing? You know?
Nothing at all.
Yeah. All right. So as we wrap up, real quick, guys, things each of you want to plug. Jordan, what have you got coming in or just came out? I know you just put out 11 prog metal bands whose third album was their best, was your most recent article I saw.
Yeah, like it was like I'm doing a lot of like prog rock bands, prog metal bands first. Now this week I'm doing 11 prog rock bands whose third album is their best. I just had the 11 prog rock, the 11 best prog rock singers ranked, which was obviously like intimidating to do because no matter what I put, I'm wrong, and I'm right.
That's the way it is with listeners.
Yeah, so I mean, just like everyone, as far as I know, is going to keep going. Like weekly, look for my prog rock lists on Loudwire. If you agree with me, disagree with me, feel free to let me know. I'm also doing some video game stuff for What Culture. It's totally unrelated to music, but if you like video game, look up that stuff too.
You're a multifaceted man.
Yeah, just talking about what I love as much as I can.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Paul, what's the palaver got on the slate for everybody coming up?
Well, we are just kicking off our album by album coverage of Porcupine Tree. So, in fact, probably when this airs, we will have just released we do a preamble at the beginning, and then we would have already released our episode on the Sunday of Life. And we are taking a complete journey from the very first album all the way through to the end of the current catalog, which we actually started with a couple of years ago when Closure Continuation came out. And it was a wonderful journey. So many of us on the Palaver were not as familiar with the entire Porcupine Tree catalog. We all had different entry points, and so going from the very beginning and spanning the entire history of the band was pretty educational and was just so fruitful in finding so much music that I had escaped me before. So yeah, that's what we're up to. So yeah, check it out.
That probably helps you understand exactly why Catherine is so excited by the fact that Voyage 35 is going to be a prog stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
That she heard that, she's like, "We're gone. We're gone." She loves that earlier stuff with Porcupine Tree. It's great stuff. I'm just like looking at your most recent episode, and I love that you're on Porcupine Tree Part 2, and it's still the preamble and the introduction.
Yeah. Well, that speaks volumes to the exact thing. We the first Porcupine Tree episode we did was Closure Continuation, I think at that point in time I made the case that we got to go back and do the whole band. So we're doing that now, and I think it's going to be a fun spring and summer of listening for everybody. So
Indeed,
thanks.
Indeed. I know I get thrown in there somewhere with the overview discussion, the overview of the overview. All right, as for myself, stuff coming up fairly soon enough. I don't do a lot of lists, but I felt inspired to do my list of my top 10 favorite obscure non-prog albums, which as much as prog is so oftentimes obscure, I figured I was going to dip into those alternate genres, the albums that I love to go back to, and pretty much nobody else knows what the hell they are. I know somebody somewhere out there, I saw a video talking about Asia and talking about supergroups, and the fact that he mentioned HSAS, I almost fell over. I don't know if you both are familiar. Paul's nodding, so I'm going, yes, you are. Hagar, Sean, Aronson, and Shreve. A one-off hard rock album with Neal Schon and Sammy Hagar. This was pre-Van Hagar days. This was about 84. And it's a very cool album, really, actually. It's got some great melodic hard rock in there. And then Sean gets to really rip it off a little bit more than he does normally with Journey. But that guy mentioned HSAS. I'm like, I've heard somebody else say it besides me. Oh my God.
Dude, that you had to have seen the MTV, when MTV did Saturday night concerts, they had a HSAS concert.
Yeah. Well, I think that album was recorded live. So that's the amazing part about it. That's some pretty damn polished stuff. They recorded it live with like 3 days practice, I think, or something like that, a rehearsal. So I got that coming up. I've got more interviews coming up. Matter of fact, I'm going to be starting a series of interviews with bands that'll be attending Prog Storm, not to be confused with Prog Stock. Prog Storm is the Canadian prog metal version of that. And one of those interviews is going to be with Paul Masvidal of Cynic. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's going to be a cool one because that is, talk about a multifaceted dude. Pretty impressive stuff. And I'm going to throw in a few song reactions here and there just see if I can piss some people off because, man, you got to watch what you say about Angine de Poitrine, man. People get a little bit salty with you. I got more than one comment First time, last time listening to you. The reviewer is stodgy and arrogant. I give it a 2 out of 10. Like they should all be done in the voice of the comic shop guy from The Simpsons.
Worst opinion ever.
Yeah, I know. Worst opinion ever. He got so caught up in the costume. I'm like, well, come on, guys. Like, if you don't want somebody talking about the costumes, don't dress up in wigged out costumes. It's a risk you take.
Go.
But I bet the costumes helped you get some attention and stick in people's brains a little bit more. But it is an album worth digesting. This is why I think in the future, we have an episode, I think, in the making that we can pull the right people together, have some fun with talking about instrumental albums. So that'll be for us. And next episode of the Prog Council is going to be the British Invasion. It's going to be our first British guests with the gentleman from Hats Off Gentlemen, It's Adequate, and Steve Gould of Rarebird, but also of Fusion, which is one of those prog festivals that they have so many of in Europe and the UK that we don't get here. So cool stuff in the future, folks. So those of you watching now, come back next month. We're going to have more good shit for you.